The screen glowed cold in the dark as my phone buzzed sharply at exactly 2:11 a.m. I stared at the caller ID and froze. My own number was flashing at me. It couldn't be. I knew every contact on my list and my own number didn't call me. Not ever. I hit the voicemail icon with trembling fingers. A crackling voice filled the silence, but it was unmistakably mine. My own voice, raw and desperate, whispered urgently, "Don't come home. Please don't come home." The words echoed in my ears, chilling me deeper than any nightmare ever could. I rewound and played the message again. The panic in my voice was so real, so immediate, like I had recorded it just moments ago, but I hadn't. I dropped the phone onto the couch, my heart hammering against my ribs. How could this be possible? I wasn't even near my phone when it rang, and I certainly didn't call myself. The voicemail continued, fading in and out, but the same desperate warning repeated. "Don't come home." It was as if the voice was trying to stop me from stepping into some unseen terror. My pulse raced, sweat dampening my palms despite the chill in the room. I had to check the time again. 2:13 a.m. 2 minutes had passed since that impossible call, yet the fear felt like it had rooted itself in my chest, tightening its grip every second. I fought the urge to call myself back, to demand answers, but the rational part of my mind screamed that nothing good could come from that. I paced the room, eyes darting to the window where shadows pressed against the glass like silent watchers. Home, the place that was supposed to be safe, familiar. But now my own voice was telling me to avoid it. I remembered the last message I'd received hours ago, a weird static noise, nothing more. Had it been a warning too, or just a glitch? I hated the thought that my phone might be haunted by something that used my own voice against me. I decided to try calling my number from another phone just to confirm that this wasn't some sick joke. No answer. The line was dead. Yet the voicemail was still there, waiting. I dialed the number again on my phone, hoping to hear something new, something that would explain this nightmare, but it rang endlessly before cutting out. My mind reeled back to the message. It felt like a fragment of my own consciousness, a version of me trying to scream through time or space to warn me. But why? What was waiting at home that was so dangerous I had to be stopped? Suddenly, my phone cracked and flickered, throwing a sharp blue light across the room, almost like it was acting on a signal I couldn't see. The VoIP app I never used opened by itself. Static noises buzzed into my ears, mixed with faint sobbing that sounded eerily like my own. Fear morphed into something darker, more visceral. I realized that the voice on the voicemail was not only myself, it was me from somewhere else. Some part of me that had already experienced the horror ahead and was cursed to send a warning I could never ignore. I wanted to run, but my legs felt rooted to the spot. The shadow at the window shifted, revealing a pale hand pressed against the glass with fingers too long, too thin to belong to a human. The voicemail played again one last time, "Don't come home." But the phone suddenly went dead, the screen black and lifeless, as if it had absorbed all the warning into silence. The coldness in the air thickened, and I knew then, coming home was no longer my choice. It was a trap set with my own voice as the bait. The moment the screen went black, a cold shiver ran down my spine. I forced myself to move, stumbling toward the window where that pale hand had pressed against the glass. But when I looked outside, there was nothing, just the empty street bathed in the harsh glow of streetlights. My heart pounded so loudly I could almost hear it overshadow the silence. Then my phone buzzed again, another voicemail from my own number. The screen lit up like a beacon in the night. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the play button. When I finally pressed it, my voice whispered again, but this time it was different, frantic and broken. "They're inside. Don't let them in. It's already too late unless you run. Run now." The words sent a fresh wave of terror crashing through me. Cold sweat trickled down my neck as I tried to shake off the creeping paranoia. Was this some elaborate prank? Some sick glitch? But the raw emotion in that voice made me doubt everything. It felt too real, too desperate. I couldn't ignore it, not after the hand at the window and the impossibility of those messages. Minutes later, my phone buzzed again. I didn't want to listen, but my curiosity and dread pushed me to open the voicemail. This time I wasn't just hearing my voice. There was a background noise, low and guttural, something breathing, something waiting. My voice cracked as I said, "They're watching through the cracks. Don't make a sound. Hide. Hide somewhere they won't find you." I dropped the phone, my chest tightening. The walls around me suddenly seemed closer, suffocating. The house I knew so well felt like a trap I'd walked into blindfolded. I kept glancing at the door, expecting it to burst open at any moment, but silence filled the rooms. The calls kept coming, each more urgent than the last. My voice breaking, pleading, warning. "They're coming for your mind next. Don't listen to the whispers. They want you alone. Please, before it's too late." My skin prickled with unease, like invisible eyes were tracing every movement I made. I couldn't trust my own senses anymore. Shadows seemed to flicker in the corners of the room, and every creak or groan of the old house jolted me awake. I tried calling someone, anyone, but the lines were dead or went straight to voicemail. No one answered. Even my own reflection in the dark windows looked distorted, as if the house itself was swallowing me whole. Then came the strangest part. I started hearing whispers in the silence, soft, indistinct murmurs that echoed just beyond comprehension. They twisted words I could almost catch, words I knew I shouldn't hear. My phone buzzed again, this time with no caller ID. I dared to check the voicemail. My voice was there, but different, colder, harsher. "You're already inside. There is no safe place anymore." My head spun. How could I be inside when I hadn't gone home? The message chilled me deeper than any previous one. Panic seized me. I wanted to run to escape the creeping madness, but the paralyzing fear kept me rooted. The house called to me in voices I didn't recognize, voices that spoke with my own tongue. I realized horrifyingly that I was losing control, not just of my reality, but of myself. I buried my face in my hands, trying to block out the voices, the messages, the terrifying truth that someone, or something, was using me as a puppet. But it was no longer clear who was pulling the strings. Then a new voicemail appeared, time-stamped just seconds ago. With trembling fingers I played it. The voice was calm but chilling. "If you hear this, it's already too late. They are not outside. They are you." The line went silent, but the dread it left behind swallowed me whole. I looked up from the phone to see the shadowed figure standing just beyond the edge of the room. It didn't move, but I knew it was waiting, watching. I couldn't tell if it was me or something else wearing my face. The phone buzzed once more. My own number flashing, the screen brightening in the darkness, relentless and impossible. And I still hadn't moved. I sat frozen, staring at the shadow that lingered at the edge of my vision, its shape flickering like a bad signal on an old TV. My phone buzzed again, my number lighting up the screen like a beacon I didn't want to answer. But now, curiosity pushed me forward. If this was some sick game or glitch, I needed to find its source. I needed to stop it. I grabbed my laptop and opened it, fingers trembling as I checked the call logs and message history. The same numbers, my own. Voicemails stacked, each with that same eerie voice, my voice pleading, warning, panicking. But what chilled me most was the timestamp. They were arriving in real time, sometimes seconds apart, yet I hadn't moved. I wasn't home. How was this possible? Then the devices began acting up. Files I hadn't touched glitched open by themselves. Images flickered and blurred, revealing briefly my living room empty just as I had left it hours ago. But it was the shadows in those images that froze my blood. They moved. Not just the usual shifting of light. These were shadows with angles that shouldn't be, shapes that stretched too long and too wide, as if something large was lurking just beyond the frame. My email notifications popped up, showing messages I never sent or received. One stood out, a short line typed in my own handwriting, but the words weren't mine. "They watch through these eyes." I blinked, heart racing. How had that message been created? How had it appeared on my screen? Suddenly my phone buzzed again, and without thinking I answered. Static first, then that voice, calm but menacing. "Look closer, you're not alone." I scanned my phone's camera app and saw the feed. The room behind me, the exact space I sat in displayed on the screen. And in the camera's peripheral view, something darker than the night crouched silently near the doorway. I spun around. Nothing. But the phone's screen showed the figure clearly, tall, gaunt, face burned into an unnatural blankness. My breath caught, terror gripping me tight. Was this some digital mirage, a trick of technology, or was something inside my home watching me? I scrambled to check all my connected devices, smart thermostat, security cameras, even the baby monitor I never used anymore. Each screen flickered briefly before hacking into distorted images filled with the same elongated shadows, the same faceless figure appearing and disappearing like a haunting mirage. I tried to call my neighbor, anyone, but the calls dropped instantly. The connection felt severed, strangled by an invisible force wiping away any chance of help. Desperately, I crossed the room to unplug my router. The second I did, the buzzing stopped, screens went dark, and silence crashed over me. Relief sparked, brief but intense. Maybe, just maybe, I was free. Then my phone buzzed once more, even without internet. I stared at the screen, an incoming call from my own number. No voicemail, just a call ringing, endless and relentless. I didn't answer, I dared not. Behind me, the soft creak of floorboards shifted everything. I wasn't alone after all. I didn't want to go back. Every bone in my body screamed to run far away, to disappear from everything I knew. But the relentless buzzing from my phone, the ceaseless voicemails from myself, and the image of that shadowy figure crawling inside the camera feeds left me no choice. If I stayed away, whatever haunted me at home would keep following, keep whispering. So despite the warnings, despite the terror clawing at my mind, I forced myself to cross the threshold. The front door was unlocked, as if waiting. My hand trembled as I pushed it open, the familiar creak sounding more like a scream. The air inside was thick, heavy with a silence that pressed down on my chest. My footsteps echoed hollowly against the walls, swallowed immediately by the stale darkness. I flicked on the lights. Nothing. Every bulb was dead. My phone's flashlight became my only guide. The beam sliced through the gloom, catching glimpses of the living room. Furniture was distorted, shadows stretched unnaturally long, twisting into impossible shapes on the walls. The air felt charged, as if vibrating just beyond hearing. I edged further inside, the beam trembling with me. Then I saw it, words scrawled across the walls in a dark, sticky substance. My own handwriting, but splotchy, frenzied. "Don't trust the silence." It was a message from myself, or some version of me too broken to stop writing. My chest tightened and I swallowed hard. The voicemail buzzed again. I raised the phone, heart pounding, and listened. "They're inside," the voice whispered urgently. "Closer than you think, they wear your skin." The line went dead. My blood ran cold. I glanced toward the hallway where the shadows hung thickest. A sudden thud echoed from upstairs, low and deliberate. Against better judgment, I climbed the stairs, each creak like a scream in my ears. The hallway stretched endlessly, impossibly long, the walls narrowing and bending until I couldn't tell left from right. The flashlight caught movement, a figure standing at the end, cloaked in darkness, face obscured. "Who's there?" I called, voice shaking. No response. The figure turned, revealing hollow eyes that burned like empty pits. My breath hitched, panic surging. I stumbled back, tripped over something soft. The beam landed on the floor, a mirror cracked and smeared with fingerprints. Reflected in its shattered fragments was my own face, distorted and wrong. Behind me, the corridor twisted again, the walls pulsing as if alive. Whispers seeped from the cracks, voices I shouldn't understand but did, murmurs promising safety, then betrayal. My phone buzzed to life again, new voicemail from myself. This time, a calm voice said simply, "You should never have come back." The house groaned, the walls seeming to close in. I realized then that this place was a trap, and crossing that threshold had invited something unforgivable inside with me. The front door slammed shut behind me with a finality that crushed any hope of escape, and just before the darkness swallowed me whole, I could swear my own voice laughed, a dry, cruel sound that wasn't mine anymore. Darkness swallowed the house like a living thing, pressing against my skin and suffocating my every breath. My phone's flashlight barely sliced through the gloom as I stumbled deeper into the bowels of the place I once called home. Every step echoed unnaturally, like the walls themselves were listening. Then the voices began. At first just fragments, whispers carried on the stale air, indistinct words overlapping in a haunting chorus. Don't trust. They're here. It's too late. Each phrase jabbed at my mind, disjointed but unmistakably urgent. I spun toward the source, but the air was thick with emptiness. Figures flickered at the edges of my vision, shapes slipping between shadows, too quick to focus on. A glimpse of pale skin, a flash of hollow eyes, a silhouette disappearing behind a door. I chased them, heart thrumming in my ears, but they dissolved each time I turned to face them. My breathing quickened, paranoia rising like a tide threatening to drown me. The walls seemed alive, breathing with me, whispering secrets I couldn't decipher. A sudden cold draft brushed past my neck. I whipped around, nothing but darkness. Then soft static crackled through the silence, a mechanical whirring rattling my nerves. Against the wall, half buried under debris, I spotted it, a small recording device blinking faintly. I lunged for it and pressed play. The voice that emerged was my own, trembling and desperate. Don't come home. Please don't come home. The words filled the room, echoing off every surface. But beneath my voice there was something else. Low, guttural breathing, as if someone or something was captured on the same recording. I looked around frantically. The faint glow from the device illuminated scratches on the wall, long, deep gouges like claws raking the plaster. A cold sweat broke across my forehead as I realized this was no hallucination. The danger was real. It had been here, recording me, watching. My phone buzzed wildly in my pocket, another voicemail arriving. Hands trembling, I listened. They want your mind. They want your soul. Don't listen to their lies. The messages weren't just warnings. They were evidence that I was unraveling, or worse, that something was pulling me apart from the inside. Suddenly, a shadow detached itself from the far wall, a featureless figure stepping forward with a slow, deliberate gait. It moved unnaturally, limbs twisting at impossible angles. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. The device played again, the voice now overlapping with laughter, low, cruel, familiar yet alien. I recognized it. It was mine. The walls closed in, the voices surged louder, and the figures multiplied, circling me like predators hungry for my sanity. In that suffocating dark, I understood the greatest horror. I was no longer alone in my own mind. Whatever had sent those voicemails was here, inside me, whispering through shadows, waiting to claim everything I was. And the recording played on. The walls breathed around me, pulsing with a rhythm I couldn't escape. As I moved through the shadowed rooms, my footsteps felt disconnected, as if I were watching myself from somewhere else. Time twisted and frayed, slipping in and out like a broken film reel. I tried to steady my thoughts, but memories tangled with the present until I couldn't tell which was which. One moment, I was sinking into the couch; the next, I was collapsing in the street outside, drenched and cold with no idea how I got there. Faces flashed before me, friends I'd never met, strangers speaking my name, laughter and screams bleeding into one another. The phone buzzed again, a sharp pulse in the chaos. I reached for it, but the screen wasn't my own anymore. Instead of the usual apps, it showed fragmented images, broken scenes of a house I didn't recognize but felt deeply familiar. A child's room with toys scattered, a kitchen table set for dinner with no one there. Each snapshot flickered and vanished before I could focus. The voicemails kept coming, my voice pleading in desperation amid static. But the words twisted oddly sometimes, phrases I didn't recall speaking, threats disguised as warnings. I strained to piece them together, but the more I tried, the more elusive they became. Suddenly, a sharp pain exploded in my head, forcing me to collapse to my knees. A figure stood over me, my own reflection distorted, fractured like a cracked mirror. Its eyes were empty, hollow wells of darkness. It grinned, and the smile wasn't mine. It mouthed words I couldn't hear, then laughed softly, a sound that curled into my bones. When I closed my eyes, memories flooded in, visions of running through endless hallways, doors shutting just before I reached them. Faces pressed against frosted glass, whispering my name in voices that weren't friendly. My name became a curse, repeated endlessly in the silence. I tried to shout, but no sound came. The line between who I was and what I feared dissolved. I caught my reflection again in a cracked window. The face staring back blinked slowly, but when I blinked, it did not. It moved its mouth without sound, as if trapping secrets I could never grasp. My phone buzzed once more. I dared to raise it, hand shaking. The voicemail this time was different, not a plea or warning, but laughter, low and cruel, echoing inside my skull. I wanted to run, to escape this nightmare unraveling me. But the house itself shifted beneath my feet, corridors stretching endlessly, windows revealing familiar strangers watching silently. I didn't know if I was inside or outside, awake or dreaming. Through the fractured reality, one terrifying truth remained clear. I was losing myself piece by piece, fractured beyond repair. And then my phone buzzed again. But this time, the caller ID was blank. My phone buzzed again in the suffocating silence of the dark room. I flinched, dread tightening its grip on me as I stared at that blank caller ID, knowing it wasn't just a random call. This was something else, something that had been lurking unseen for longer than I dared imagine. Desperate for answers, I tore through my apartment. Every device, every drawer, every corner became a potential hiding place for the truth. That's when I found it, a small, almost invisible camera, nestled behind the ventilation grate near the ceiling. Its red light was faint but unmistakable. The cold realization hit me like a blow. I had been watched for weeks, months maybe, by whatever presence was tormenting me through my own number and voice. My breath caught. How long had it been recording? How actively had it manipulated my life? The voicemails, the strange glitches on my devices, the shadowy figures, were they orchestrated performances for some unseen audience? I pulled out more hidden gadgets, microphones tucked into lamps, wires checked for taps, proof lingering beneath my skin. Someone or something had invaded my space in the most intimate way. This wasn't just random harassment, it was personal. I replayed the voicemails again, focusing on the background sounds I'd ignored before, the faint static, the rhythm of my own breathing, the subtle, almost imperceptible footsteps packing just out of view. The voice wasn't just mine, it was mimicked, manipulated, edited. My own cries of warning and panic were twisted into a cruel script I was forced to perform unknowingly. Paranoia blossomed into stark terror. I wasn't just the victim, I was the puppet. The threat wasn't outside me, it was embedded in my life, my memories, my very sense of self. I checked every window and door. Nothing. No forced entry, no signs of an intruder, yet the evidence was undeniable. The violation had come from inside. I sank into a chair, hands shaking, and stared at my phone. The screen glared back as it buzzed again. This time, a text message appeared with no sender. "We've been here all along. You just didn't see the thread." The room chilled. My skin prickled. The thread, I whispered the word aloud. A connection, a link I'd overlooked. The constant buzzing in my ears. The shadows that moved just out of focus. The way my own voice called out warnings I couldn't trust. Suddenly, my phone screen flickered, and photos began to load, images of me sleeping, eating, walking through my own apartment, each frame darker, more distorted than the last, revealing moments I couldn't remember. The camera had captured my life, rewriting my reality. A shudder ran through me as I realized the terrifying truth. The nightmare wasn't new. It had started long before the first voicemail. I had been unraveling, manipulated, watched without knowing, trapped in a game I didn't even know I was playing. I tried to erase the devices, smash the phone, but the buzzing persisted, the thread unraveling further, tighter. And then the voice came again. Not from the phone, not from the speakers, but inside my head, low and insistent. We've always been here. The line between you and us doesn't exist anymore. My heart stopped. I was no longer alone, and the unseen thread had woven itself deep inside me, inseparable, inescapable. The phone buzzed once more. The buzzing never stopped. It echoed in my mind, a relentless drumbeat hammering at the edge of reason. My phone vibrated again, relentless, its screen flickering like a pulse I could neither ignore nor escape. I had to get out. I needed air, freedom, to break the chain that bound me to this place and whatever dark presence had rooted itself within my life. I rushed for the front door, fists pounding against the wood, but my shoulder met cold resistance. The lock was jammed. I scrambled to try the windows, but each was sealed tight, unyielding against desperate fingers. Panic swelled inside me, suffocating and absolute. The walls seemed to lean in, mocking my futile struggle to break free. Turning back inside, the shadows deepened, twisting into forms that watched with hollow eyes. The creak of floorboards behind me quickened my pulse, always just beyond sight but never far. The house, that supposed refuge, had become a prison designed to trap, to torment. I ran to the basement door, heart slamming, hope flickering, but it wouldn't budge. The house mocked me in silence, denying every escape. The phone buzzed again, the screen alive with my number, the source itself taunting me. Heat bloomed in my chest, a mix of terror and fury. I wasn't going to be broken without a fight. I had to face the darkness head-on, even if it devoured what remained of my sanity. In the heart of the house, in the room where the shadows congregated thickest, I found the old mirror shattered across the floor. Pieces caught the weak light, reflecting not just my fractured image but something else, something watching through the cracks in reality. I pressed my palm against the cold glass shard, and my reflection twisted, morphing into a pale shape with eyes void of life. It smiled cruelly, a smile I realized belonged to me and not me all at once. The whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar, voices overlapping with my own frantic thoughts, drowning out reason. I tried to pull away, but the mirror seemed to hold me, tethered by unseen threads that pulled tighter with every breath. "You belong here," the voice hissed, layered with mine and something foreign. "There is no escape. You are the key and the cage." I staggered back, heart tearing. Every attempt to flee had led me here, to the center of the storm. I realized the menace wasn't something outside or separate. It was woven into me, into the very fabric of my being. My phone buzzed once more. The screen lit up, but no voice came. Instead, a final message appeared, typed in my own handwriting: "Run, or become the next echo." I looked around, trapped between shadow and glass, sanity and madness, knowing the breaking point had arrived. Whatever waited beyond reality's edge was patient, patient enough to claim every fragment of who I was. And I was running out of time. The cold glass shard slipped from my trembling fingers and clattered to the floor. My reflection shattered into a dozen twisted fragments, each distorting the man I thought I was. Fear gripped me tighter than ever, but beneath it, something new began to stir, a creeping, unbearable truth clawing its way to the surface of my mind. I had been running in circles, chasing shadows and whispers that were never truly outside me. The voicemails, my desperate pleas, were not warnings from some external darkness. They were echoes, reverberations inside a mind trapped between worlds. I sank to the floor, chest heaving, and the room around me shimmered. The walls bled away, melting into pale mist, and the heavy weight pressing on my lungs lightened. The suffocating silence was replaced with a calm that felt both alien and haunting. I was not alive. I was dead. The house, the messages, the shadows, they were fragments of my own fading consciousness clinging to reality. Images flooded my mind. The twisted wreckage on the narrow road, twisted metal and shattered glass, the deafening silence afterward. Pain and then darkness. The house, my home, had been lost to fire. An inferno I fled only in this liminal space between life and whatever came next. I understood now that the voicemails were from me, yes, but from desperate moments before my death. Each message was a plea from my dying self trying to warn the living, to stop myself from stepping into the final darkness too soon. But there was no stopping what had already begun. The whispers and figures weren't intruders. They were memories decayed and warped by the void. The pale hand at the window, the faceless shapes, manifestations of a soul unraveling, lost in the shadows between life and death. My voice, cracked and raw in those voicemails, was an anguished thread between two realms. I had become my own haunting, trapped in a twilight prison of thought and regret. The phones, the devices, all were portals reflecting my fractured mind's desperate struggle to hold on. I felt a pull now, gentle but insistent, urging me toward something beyond the room that was no longer there. I rose unsteadily, the world dissolving around me like ash caught on the breeze. The house vanished, replaced by an endless gray expanse, silent except for the echo of my own heartbeat fading into nothing. I called out, but my voice held no weight here. It was a whisper swallowed by emptiness. "Why?" I finally asked the void. No answer came, only the faintest shimmer on the horizon, a light, distant and beckoning. I understood then. This was the passage I could no longer deny. The fear, the dread, the endless loops of warning messages, they were my resistance against the inevitable. But the true horror was not the unknown outside. It was the surrender to this lonely, eternal in-between. One last buzzing surged through the silence, my phone ringing, but with no number, no voice. Just the endless, hollow call of a soul caught in its own echo. I knew I had to cross that invisible line, to fade and become silence, or be trapped forever in the endless voicemail of my own despair. The light grew brighter, and I took a step toward it, toward whatever waited beyond the veil. And in that final moment, the last thing I heard was my own voice whispering, "Don't come home." Because there was no home anymore. Only this endless echo of a life already gone. The light had promised release, a final breath beyond the shadows where my fractured soul flickered. But instead of peace, I found myself adrift in a silence so vast it swallowed even the faintest whisper. The gray expanse stretched endlessly in every direction, a void with no edges, no landmarks, only the faint hum of my own breath fading into nothingness. And then an impossible sound pierced the void, my phone buzzing. The noise shattered the emptiness like a fracture across fresh ice. I fumbled blindly, searching through the intangible void until my fingers closed around the cold, unyielding shape of my phone. The screen blinked alive, impossibly bright against the gloom, my own number flashing insistently. I hesitated, dread twisting deep inside me. How could this be? How could any part of the world I left behind still cling to me here? The voicemail icon blinked, beckoning. I touched it, every nerve screaming to shut it down, to run from the echoes that had already claimed me. My voice, hoarse, chilling, flooded the empty space once more. "Don't come home. Please don't come home." The words looped endlessly, haunting me with their desperate insistence. They felt older, deeper this time, as if coming from a place further removed than before, yet impossibly familiar. Each repetition frayed the edges of my sanity, twisting the void into something darker, more oppressive. I spun in the endless gray, but there was nowhere to go, no escape, no light beyond this recycled nightmare. The phone buzzed again, Another call from my own number again. I answered silence, then a breath sharp and ragged but not mine. A voice breathed through the void with a softness that chilled my soul. You thought it was over. No face, no form, just the long, terrible pause that stretched into infinity. I dropped the phone. It vanished as it touched the void, but the buzzing continued, inside my head now, a relentless ringing I could not shut off. The voices returned, whispering from beyond the edges of memory, twisting words I could almost understand. I was trapped, not in a house, not in a body, but in this eternal loop of my own making, the endless reverberation of fear, regret, and desperation. Time lost meaning. Minutes, hours, years dissolved into a single moment that stretched without end. And in that moment, I knew this nightmare would never fade. It would replay, cruel and unyielding, echoing across the void as long as I existed. Because the voice kept calling, my own voice, from a number that belonged to no one but me. And I was still listening,